Fuzz Bat Gigs Podcast, episode number 5, and we're here with Deathbed, i.e. Innes, Grant, and Iain. And you'll have heard Secret Agent Rat by Crystal Fairy, and A Break the Same by Deathbed. So yeah, first off, I'll ask each of you how you're doing. So Innes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
And how's yourself, Grant?
Really good, thanks. Yeah.
And Iain, how are you?
Yeah, good. I'm just chilling at home.
So first off, how would you describe Deathbed to the folks at home? Like, basically, what is Deathbed, and how would you describe it?
All right, who wants to take that one?
You go for it, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the question? How did it start and what does it represent?
How would you describe Deathbed, and what does Deathbed represent, basically?
Okay. It's basically just us three are good pals from years and years ago, known each other a really long time. And just started making music together off the back of the fact that we all lived in the same city for once. And that kind of mainly just coalesced on the fact that we were all listening to quite kind of noisy, heavy music at the time. And we just didn't really, none of our other friends were really making music of that ilk, so we just decided to give it a bash. Because I don't think, two of us were playing in sort of kind of, I guess, more sort of on the indie rock side of the spectrum. So I guess it was just kind of trying to change things up, knock a new flavour into things. That's about as much as I could maybe say about it, I think.
That's a good answer. I think that could describe it properly, because the way I would describe yourselves would just be pretty like, you know, like a noisy sort of punk kind of thing, I guess, with some sort of metallic kind of like fringes, I suppose. Maybe that's maybe the way I would look at it. Yeah, like I could have thought I would say like noise rocks or noise punky sort of stuff, but then I saw a thing online recently that sort of mentioned the metal kind of thing, and I was like, well, I hadn't really thought of that, but some metal tinges, I suppose, in what you guys do, like in a bit. But it's more punk to me, but I can see why someone would think that.
I would definitely agree with you there. It sort of started on the back of like sort of punk and like hardcore, and like noise and stuff, like noise rock and all that, because that was the kind of gigs we were going to at the time. That was the sort of music we were kind of sharing with each other. But I think over time we started to realize like we were sort of, I guess, subconsciously elements of like System of a Down and like stuff we listened to when we were really young. You know, all the more like metal influences. So I get it's like only in the past year or so we sort of realized that was more of a thing, especially after we did a cover set of System of a Down songs.
Yeah.
Last New Year, like, oh yeah, definitely taking some hints and tips from fucking Chop Suey here and there.
I think that's what's good about it as well, is because we never really started with a sort of blueprint, which meant that the sound has kind of just developed, and we've probably not really noticed it that much, because I guess we were only ever writing tunes that we were sort of into at the time, rather than thinking, oh, we're going to be a punk band, or we're going to be, you know, anything like that. It's just sort of been quite organic, which is nice.
I think to answer like directly like what is Deathbed, I would say Deathbed is like the result of 3 people trying to use like a band setting as a way to like create a certain energy. Like I go into it as a sort of like I want to like release a lot of anger and stuff, so that's where the metal influence and stuff come from for me.
Yeah, that's good answers from all of you, actually, and it's nice as well to hear you guys, to hear System of a Down mentioned as well, because System of a Down are awesome.
Yeah,
that's nice to hear you guys name check them for sure. So, did you guys hear their the 2 new songs they put out, actually?
Yeah.
What did you make of them?
There was one of them that I think it was like they're both on the same kind of single, and it's the first track. I was just kind of a bit like, oh, this is like the sort of quite crappy metal epic, you know, 4-chord thing that they were doing kind of on kind of the weaker tracks on like the last track they did. But then that second track was like quite fun, I thought. The one that had all the sort of mad beats, like mad timing and all that. I thought that was really fun. So there was that kind of it was the 2 sides, the shit side and the really
Genocidal Humans is the second track. It was much shorter. That was the better of the 2 tracks, I thought.
Yeah.
Like that was a very fun song.
Yeah.
So
I think personally, when I go back to System of a Down, it's always either the first album or Toxicity. Like I don't really listen to Mesmerize and Hypnotize very much, so I'm always kind of wishing they'd go back to that, but whether they will, I mean, the sort of natural progression of time suggests they probably will never go fully back to that sort of mental first album sound. But
I also think that they can't do that. But
yeah, you're probably right.
There's sort of inevitability, like what you just said, like the sort of passage of time dictates that they're,
yeah, because the first album's nuts.
That just sort of youthful energy that sort of surrounds a band, especially a band like System, when there's like all these like not just fresh for the band, but like fresh ideas in general, where these guys are kind of doing stuff that hadn't existed before. When they're all that sort of just peters out over time. So Genocidal Humans was like it was a fun track, but it was by no means like anything compared to like, I don't know, Sweet Pea or something like that, which is just unbridled creativity and energy. It's so like that whole self-titled album is just like one of the best in my opinion.
I like Toxicity better. I think that's them at their peak. I think that's kind of them like when they've developed it. The first album's great, but I think that's Toxicity is when that's the best one for me. I like Mesmerize and Hypnotize, but I think they're at their peak at Toxicity. But the younger then, they're never going to be able to like recapture that. Like it's like a lightning in a bottle, as they say, kind of moments and stuff. So
I listen to Toxicity more as well. I think simply because that's the one that I was introduced to first. I think my brother had it and I stole it and listened to it on a Walkman CD in the car all the time, and that so it's way more nostalgic for me. And I got into the first albums later on when I was getting kind of more into the punky sound. They're just so much more crazy. And I also really liked Mesmerize. I never listened to Hypnotize though, even though it came out together. I've still never listened to Hypnotize, apart from maybe a couple tracks.
I think Mesmerize is arguably the better one of the two, I would say.
I like it. There's some really good tracks on there. It's very different, obviously, but
just in terms of it's actually quite a nice wee sort of coming back on itself thing. Is that System of a Down was a hugely influential thing on Deathbed more than just the music, because when Iain was saying that he listened to Toxicity when he was younger, Toxicity was one of the first albums that was ever bought for me by a friend, and that was Grant that bought me. For my 12th birthday, after a couple of months of knowing him in high school, he bought me System of a Down Toxicity and changed the course of the future.
I single-handedly shaped his future.
Yeah,
it's coming.
It was my long-term strategy.
Grant, did you buy that album and then listen to it, rock around to it yourself, and then?
I remember. I have a distinct memory of being in Aberdeen and buying the album in HMV in Aberdeen and not having a Walkman or anything and having to wait the whole weekend, having to come back home and then listen to it. I was about 10 or 11 or something. And then, I don't know, I must have just started buying it for other people as well.
Gradually sowing the seeds to form a band, basically. It's what was going on there by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was that and the self-titled Rage album. That's
a banging album as well. That's a great album.
They were the ones that sowed the seeds, man.
Yeah, we're going to start rapping soon. Innes has been chopping himself up.
One of the free tracks you got to pick was a rap tune, so I wouldn't be surprised if I saw rap cropping up in the sound later on down the line. So
we will talk about that later if we talk about the song. Grant is super into hip hop, so he shows us so much good stuff.
Yeah, I showed them I Am because I was hoping Deathbed might go down that route, but we went down the System route, so that's fine.
Grant did a French degree in that, and then he's been trying to teach us French so that we can turn.
So we can turn into the next French 90s hip hop act.
So is Grant the musical guru of Deathbed? He's guys, listen to this cool thing. And you go, God, we've never heard that before. You've changed our lives, Grant.
Yeah,
I'm talking about it. It's really looking that way. Yeah,
Grant's a sort of Seamus Mill and Dominic Cummings type figure. He's the sort of he's sowing the seeds behind the scenes. He's the advisor. He's the Vladimir Surkov. Or Vladislav Surkov. He's behind the scenes, pulling the strings.
I don't know any people.
I've got a big notice board in my room with Deathbed titled on it, and I pull strings across world maps and try and. It's a big project for me, and these guys are just the puppets.
Right. So I guess so moving forward with that. So what year did you guys form actually? How long have you been a band? because I'm trying to work this out, because if I became aware of you guys, it must have been end of 2018 would have been the first time I saw yourselves play at the Depot. Facebook sort of said that you guys were formed kind of then as well, but I appreciate some of those bands could exist before they make their Facebook pages and stuff. So when did you guys actually start playing music together?
When did we start making music together?
Yeah.
Well, we've been making in various different things. Like we've been playing music together since we were like high school age. Like I'm sure Grant and Innes were like making stuff before I joined in. Like, as I met Innes like later on, I went to a different high school, and then through like family ties, like I joined the friend group, and like how old were you? Like 13, 12?
Yeah, around about that.
Yeah.
So there was like a band, we played in a band in Stirling. Grant was involved in that, unfortunately, or it would have turned into a hip hop act called Frank. That was fun. It was like a total indie thing, but we played just Deathbed as like a different thing as well. And it's why you take that, because Deathbed was kind of your thing. It started as your thing.
Yeah, as Iain was saying, like we'd all been playing in different sort of bands and stuff together anyway, and like Deathbed was like a more of a songwriting project than anything. It wasn't really like a band. It was more myself writing songs that I then like showed to. It wasn't even Grant and Iain in the band at the time, just to different friends of ours, and that was more like fucking like sound like Pixies or Pavement or something, like totally different.
Yeah.
Didn't we have a SoundCloud called Deathbed where we like put our
Yeah. I mean, there was also like all this like daft, like ambient, like Ableton shit that me and Iain used to do when we first like kind of when we were hanging out in first years of like university and stuff like that. So it wasn't really anything that had any direction. It was more of just a project name that all sorts of random shit was just getting fed into. But what I was saying at the beginning, the three of us were all sort of listening to the same stuff at the same time, and I think we're quite keen to sort of play in a band that was maybe a bit noisier and heavier and do all that sort of shit. And then I think like what you were saying about Facebook names and stuff, I think I had a Facebook at that time. I was just like, I can't be fucked changing like the name on it and stuff like that. So like, let's just call ourselves Deathhead, like the projects previous to that.
Well, that's what happened, remember, because we were kind of jamming while Lucas was still technically in Deathbed, and we were well bleak.
Oh yeah.
And it was only there was a sort of Lucas was sort of concentrating on his thing, and sort of we decided just to amalgamate the two, and I slipped in, and alas, well bleak was no more.
Yeah.
Well bleak's a future project now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. That's interesting to know. But yeah, so basically, then you guys ended up recording. Well, the first release of the Deathbed name that I could see was the split you guys did with Luke. Luke does music under the name Sulka. So I saw that the first release that came out when that came out was I'll check my notes there. August 2018 that you guys put that split out with him. So was that the first time you guys had recorded anything, or had you recorded some stuff before, but that was the first time you were like, right, let's put something out?
No, so that was prior to Iain and Grant being. That's what I was talking about a minute ago. That was prior to all that even happening. That was something that I just recorded by myself at my parents' house when I was living at home.
On that again, was it Cow Song
and some other one that I can't remember. It was just like an instrumental. I'd been sitting on those songs for a really long time, and I think it was just. It's just Lucas had written a couple of new songs, and we wanted to play a gig together or something like that, and that's why we released that split.
There was a transition period where, so I joined the band. I played those songs that were on the split with you, and Lucas was playing drums, and we had a little mini tour. Lucas from Sulka, that's what we're talking about, and we had a little tour with them, with him, and we kind of like, just because me and Innes and Lucas were also Sulka, so we kind of went on a tour to. What was it? Leeds and Manchester. Played 2 shows, and then we kind of switched the songs in Deathbed and got Grant involved, and then we played a couple of those old tunes with some new heavy ones, and then it kind of became just the heavy stuff. So it kind of like it was like an actual like progression into it. It didn't just happen suddenly. It was like a weird like morph from one band to the other.
Yeah, it wasn't quite cut and dry, was it? It was sort of.
It was like, what project is this and what are we doing? And then you decided like, nah, like I don't want Deathbed to be what I was doing anymore. I want it to be this band, and that was me, Grant, and then it's like just playing the heavy stuff, and like I was then playing drums because I played bass initially for Deathbed, like when it was Innis's songwriting stuff.
And Lucas played the drums on initially today, and then it evolved.
Yeah,
right. It's interesting because the Deathbed stuff's so different from his stuff. Like it's like very DIY, lo-fi, sort of good, just indie sort of bedroom kind of pop stuff. It's great, but it's quite a fair difference between him and yourselves and stuff. It's quite an interesting split because it's got like it's very different like sounding songs on either side of it. But that works in its favor. I think it's quite a nice release. So
yeah, I think it's just nice because it was Innis writing stuff by himself in his room, and then Lucas writing stuff in his room by himself. And, you know, they're all, like, Innis and Lucas have been pals for ages, so it comes together as, like, a nice little thing.
I remember being a big fan of Cow Song from that split, and I think that song was actually quite, I don't know, it sort of foreshadowed what was gonna become a Deathbed in a way.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that song and, like, really, really liking the sound of it and liking that sort of...
We played that song, like, in a few of our first shows, like, in that gig that we played in 13th Note with Watch Cries, the one that's taped on YouTube, like we played.
Yeah, that we played that song quite a while.
Cow Song's a good one. I quite like that one. Like I think that's a really good tune. So when was the first gig that you guys played with, like as the freebie as it is now? Like when was the first gig with Grant effectively?
I remember it was at Sleazy's.
Yeah. That was a gig that was like, I think it was organized by like my girlfriend did a lot of kind of like trade union stuff, and I think there was some sort of, it was like a mental health in the workplace type thing, and they were putting on a show, and I think we sort of covertly sort of used that as an excuse to as like a sort of day to aim for to perform like new songs and stuff. So it's like what Iain was saying a minute ago, we were playing a bunch of the old stuff that was written ages ago, and it was on the more sort of, I guess, like alternative rock side of the spectrum. But then towards the end of the set, we played like these 3 really, really loud songs.
The ones on the demo. It was those 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the first one. Was like I think that was like December 2018 was when we played that gig. So I think 2018 was the first time we played together, the 3 of us.
Was it that gig? Because I remember the first time I saw Deathbed was when you guys supported Duds that Ryan Draver put on at the depot.
That was Former Incarnation.
It was in 2018. That started to make a bit of sense because I remember seeing that gig and I remember enjoying Deathbed then, but I remember enjoying I was there to see Duds and stuff. So and then it's funny because I could have had almost forgotten that I'd seen Deathbed, and then when I saw you guys again when you were the 3 of you April 2019 and stuff. Well, no, yeah, I was wait a minute. I've seen this band before, another time. But it sounds like it was a different incarnation of that, so that would maybe make sense as to what I feel less bad about that now. That I kind of remember the first time, and then I remember kind of not really quite getting it the first time, but the second time I saw you, I was like, this is fucking amazing. I really love this. But the first time I was like, this is cool and I like this, but it's no Duds, is it? So
Duds.
What I can't remember what lineup we played with Duds. Was it the older stuff in it, or was it the newer? Was I playing bass or was I playing drums?
Yeah. So I mean, you've got it was. I mean, I remember being so happy to being asked to play that gig because
Duds were your favorite band at the time.
Duds are so amazing and really interesting. I think we were supported by another band as well who were doing sort of quite post-punk sort of sounding stuff. So they kind of tied in together, and then there was us, and it's like what you're saying, we were playing kind of quite disjointed all over the place, or to be quite honest, it was a bit sort of middle of the road indie rock stuff that's just a bit and then there's these
I remember that song,
and then and then it was Duds who are this completely fucking schizoid, angular, jaggy guitar band with 9 people on stage playing all sorts.
Amazing.
So what I'm saying is, no wonder you forgot about us that night. quite.
It wasn't like I necessarily forgot. Like it was like I remember seeing that, and then it was what was it? It was a while later. It was like there was a gig. I remember it was the Endless Swarm lot. It's Fiesta Poco were putting on a gig at Banshees, and I remember seeing. I didn't go to it, but I remember seeing like a post to the bill, and I remember listening to like I think the demo would have been out then. I remember listening to it, and I was like, oh, this, and I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, you know, I'd really like to see them and stuff. And I almost went to that gig. Like me and my girlfriend Nora, we almost went to that. Who you guys know who's done your sound before. Like we almost went to that gig, but then I can't remember why. I just wasn't feeling in the mood for it like later on or something. So we didn't go in the end. But that was the first time I was like, oh yeah, this band are good. But I'd forgotten that like I'd seen a previous incarnation of you guys like before at a different gig. If that makes sense. So.
That was a ridiculously like formative experience. That
was a big one for us.
Is I think because that originally I can't remember who was meant to play that night, but it was another like grindcore band essentially was meant to play that night, and they had to pull out, and so they just I think Graham from Endless Swarm just put out a wee thing being like, oh, if anyone wants to play this, like drop your demos or whatever, and you know we just need someone else for the bill. And I remember at the time being like a bit sort of like, oh, that'd be cool. I really liked Don't Snop. I really liked Endless Swarm. And thinking that'd be a cool show to play. And, you know, they ended up asking us to come and play it. I mean, all those bands that night, so it was Gendo Akari, Ona Snop, and Endless Swarm, and they just absolutely blew out the water. And like, I just remember the three of us just being like, oh, grindcore for life, man.
I remember being really nervous before that gig because I think that was maybe the first one where we were the opposite of the heaviest on the bill.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of being like, are we hard enough? is our music as mad as these guys? And is like, you know, like, because when you listen to like Ona Snopper, it's just like it's like a whirlwind because so much is going on. I remember being really sort of nervous that we just, you know, were kind of heavy, but not to the same extent, that we were just going to sort of be sort of lukewarm welcome, but everyone was there to see everyone else really.
Yeah, I mean, but after that show, like everyone there is so nice and so
exactly, and that's what was so
you know, like like absolute grindcore stands who live for the fast fucking music, just being like so supportive of, because like what Grant said, we were definitely more, I guess you would bill us as like noise rock is like what, like in the context of that gig, I think we were definitely sort of noise rock, whereas everyone else is like power violence grindcore, like the most extreme. But it was like so gratifying to play that show and then have such like unanimous like support and enthusiasm about what we were doing, because that definitely was like a springboard for us to be like, all right, let's like try and challenge ourselves to be even heavier, even faster, and all that sort of stuff. You know. Yeah.
That's cool to hear because like I'm kind of glad I didn't go to that gig. I think I might have been going to a bunch of gigs that week and I was just kind of fed out. I don't know, I just don't want to go or something. It's kind of like, it's kind of funny thinking about that now when you're kind of like, oh man, like I'm totally gagging on that gig right now. But it sounds like that was a really cool one, and I'm kind of gutted I missed it because I remember. Well, first off, we'll give a shout out to the Endless Swarm guys because I played a gig they organised before as well, and they were very friendly and very welcoming, and they're a great grindcore band, of course. But Graham, his name's Shep, and Matthew and Dave, they're all very friendly, really brand new sort of guys and stuff. They made I felt very welcome when I played with them and stuff. It was really nice, and they're good people, so it's nice to get them a shout as well, while we're talking about stuff. But no, I remember that because I remember when that was coming up, I was like, oh, I really wish I went, because I remember saying it was just stuck in Nort, and I was like, oh, this I see this gig's happening in Banshee, it could be cool, the band of this band Deathbench, and she was like, oh yeah, Deathbench are great, because I think she must have done your sound at some point before that, I think so.
Yeah, Nora's done our sound loads of times before. Worked with Nora loads of times.
She was very enthusiastic about catching yourselves at a bill and stuff. She's an amazing sound tech as well, so we should really there's ever some of her way there as well. So you mentioned the demo. That's maybe another good point to talk about as well. So you recorded that. Did you just do that at home, or did you do that in a practice room? That was just free, sort of effectively almost home, or DIY sort of recordings with these stuff, because the quality on your album is obviously much better recorded stuff, but because the demos are quite scrappy, but they do the job. They show what you guys are about and stuff. But yeah. So was that recorded just at home or in a practice room or something, or did you go to a wee studio quickly to do that? Or
that was at Ian's flat, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we recorded that in my room. I was like a big flat at the time, like ridiculously cheap, nasty flat in the West End, and we just like I had my like drum kit and everything set up in there, and we just like live recorded it, didn't we? And
yeah, because I'm trying to remember how you mic'd, because we had like a shortage of mics, so the drum was mic'd kind of sort of scatterbrained. I can't really remember.
Basically, like, because we were using my interface to record it, and that only had 4 inputs on the front. So
yeah, that was it. Yeah,
one mic going into the guitar amp. I think we DI'd the bass. I think that's what.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
and I think we just had the bass drum and like a room mic. I think.
I had that big Ampeg mic, not Ampeg. I had that big bass amp at the time. I can't remember what it was.
That got DI'd into the front.
Oh yeah.
Our amp got DI'd into the front, and then I think we had a kick drum and a room mic. So like you can't hear much like high end or snare.
Yeah.
You can hear lots of like washy cymbals and stuff. But yeah, that was just done in the space of about 2 hours or something like that. That was very slapdash. Oh, and then we recorded, and then we just overdubbed the vocals one day with a SingStar mic. We had a microphone that you use for SingStar, like that PS2 game, and
I remember that.
It's like mics to record with.
Yeah, and then we plugged that through a Line 6 Spider amp and put it onto we didn't put it onto the insane setting, but I think it was like something close. And then that was so much fun because I think we just all played the music really loud. No, we didn't play the music loudly. We had me wearing headphones.
Yeah, well,
silent.
We went for this sort of free association sort of approach where we spun Innes around as much as possible till he was like didn't have a clue what was going on, and then pressed record and put him in front of the mic.
And then they started shoving me around.
Yeah. But then the lyrics he recorded have just become the words ever since. What was it? Ghost of 1,000.
The way of songwriting, I will say that.
Yeah, like what Grant said, all the lyrics that we like made up on the spot that day, getting spun around and pushed and like thrown around. Effectively, we were wrestling whilst I was holding on, just like shouting stuff into a microphone. That's still the same stuff that I shout when we're like playing live. It's all just like daft phrases, which, like Grant said, one of them was like the ghost of 1,000 plagues, which is just probably like the best thing I've.
Didn't you come up with that on the way to Sainsbury's?
It was one day when me and Ian were. I think I had been listening to lots of black metal, and I was like trying to describe. Like I was trying to say to Ian, like I would love to record a black metal album. It seems so easy, just like the same drums repeated for 8 hours, lots of noise through a practice amp, and I was like, and then you just make up vocals. Like Ghost of the Plagues and like
yeah, there you go, that's it.
What song was that on actually?
On the album it's called GOATP, which literally is the acronym for Ghost of 1,000 Plagues.
Were those songs like instrumentals basically when you went in to record them and then you're like, fuck, we need lyrics, and then that's how you kind of came up with the lyrics, you spun them round? There
was like lots of like squawks and screams and like grunts and stuff that were sort of part of the songs. So like almost like kind of percussive. So like when we were playing songs, I would hear like vocal rhythms in my head, but I didn't have like lyrics for them.
Until that fateful day.
That fateful day when I got shoved around and booted in the teeth.
Got a picture.
Right.
We got the best out of it.
I think
I got to mention one thing about that was really funny was that Innes only had, like, when we were wrestling, the music was only coming out for Innes through his headphones. So you got to picture the fact that me and Grant are wrestling around like no music.
Yeah.
And we're like pretending that we're hearing the music. We're pretty much like guessing where he is in the song, jumping around, trying to smash. It's like, but there's like, so you can just hear us going.
But that's what's funny about it, is because we were trying to be silent for the mic. We were like whispering and like
this was in his own,
pretending to go mental, but as quietly as possible.
We're like trying to guide in this through his like trip, I guess. That's kind of how it felt.
Right. Okay. That's the reason. I'm glad you guys said that there. So yeah, I think that's now the perfect point to go and play some songs. So we'll cut the first part there.
Stars Pourquoi tant de haine? C'est vraiment pas la peine. Shuriken te le dira, les hommes sont les mêmes. Malgré les pressions et l'argumentation visant à la destruction de ma nation.
Même si j'ai grandi au milieu des rues et ayant derrière moi des tas de flics au cul, je me suis vu et je suis m'engager sur une piste. Les cités de Marseille semblent bien tristes.
L'enfance est passée, depuis combien d'amis sont tombés, ne se sont pas relevés. Combien de mères j'ai vu pleurer sur les corps de leurs fils par la mort fauchée.
Pendant 7 jours, sur le béton des tours, les larmes de Dieu qui tombaient du ciel. Pour ce monde fou de Satan la cour, je regardais les violences de mes yeux de miel.
J'ai vu les feuilles mortes, les arbres en automne, tourner à la couleur rouge vive comme le fleuve de sang qui encore se répand, prend sa source en Afrique et s'étend aux 4 vents.
Yeah, la note est bien lourde, tu ne vois pas ce sang, t'as la mémoire courte, où tu fuis tes souvenirs à une idéologie et volontairement, tu te la raccourcis.
Alors dans ce cas, tu es mon ennemi. Viens ici, si ma religion m'enseigne vœu de paix, la paix ne compte plus si je me sens blessé.
Tu te souviendras de la couleur du sombre rouge, tu te soumettras, pas d'accord?
Bouge, toi le frère noir aveugle et sans attention, rouge est la couleur de la révolution.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green. Africa.
La rue, combien d'enfants a-t-elle emporté, en a-t-elle eu et abattu, je ne sais plus, le trottoir. Si sombre quand vient le soir, où la mémoire n'a plus d'espoir, semble trop
noir comme la couleur de la peau de mon peuple enchaîné par l'esclavage mental. Car l'ignorance est telle que le malin l'emporte. Pour un démon qui se voit fort et frappe à nos portes.
Par la wapa, protège-nous des ténèbres absolues, toi qui peux voir. Toi qui es bon, c'est pas trop tard, n'étant pas parfait. J'essaie de faire de même, je tenterai d'être juste et ça c'est mon problème.
Dominer ma rage, être équitable et sage. Tourner la page sur ceux qui se plaisent au bavardage. Plus de xénophobie, ni de politique. Rien que l'alliance des poètes afro-asiatiques.
Vois-tu ce noir au fond de mes yeux, 40 frères à mes côtés et ils parlent pour eux.
Notre pouvoir est tel qu'ici les barreaux de toute prison. Noir est la couleur de l'unification.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green.
It began in Africa.
A whole lot of talk about the red, black and green. Africa.
Laisse le stress progresse sans cesse oppressé, presse et laisse l'esprit aux promesses. Pourquoi devrais-je avoir confiance au croulant, déclarant des conneries au nom du président?
C'est pareil mon frère, pourquoi devrais-je avoir un visa? La terre créée par Dieu n'appartient pas à l'État, toi ou à moi, ou quiconque s'envoie le droit. L'argent est roi, passe avant tout encore une fois.
C'est une honte de voir les dirigeants à l'assemblée crier, pleurer comme des enfants. Tout est faux, tout pour le dos et j'ose le clamer du haut de mon micro.
As-tu vu le vert, non pas le pervers, des plaines souriantes de la terre-mère? Enfants déracinés, on a participé à construire le grand pays de la liberté.
Les récompenses ont été pour les fils de Cham, le Ku Klux Klan et la guerre du Vietnam.
Plus de mensonges à l'avenir, faites attention car vert est la couleur de la libération.
Rouge, noir, vert dans nos visions.
La seule solution.
Okay, so those who are listening there will have just heard Cow Song by Deathbed, Lefty Dog, Run Caper Run by Melt Banana, Copy Me by Shake Chain, Mondrian Was a Liar by Botch, Pianos by Glass City, Red, Black, Green, Sofa Jazz Mix by I Am, and Eraser by Soka. So, continuing on with what we were saying there, I'm assuming that helped you guys get some more gigs and stuff, because you now had that to kind of punt to people basically and be like, this is what we sound like.
What do you mean, the demo, sorry?
Yeah, well, then like, you know, you recorded the demo and then you now had some songs you can then be like to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume you got some more gigs off the back of that at all? Or
that's what got us the gig with Cloud Nothings.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. You guys played with them.
Yeah, they came to Glasgow and played in St. Luke's. I think we found out that we were kind of on a list of people that were submitted to them to play. And then we waited a wee bit and then found out that it was us. So was that through Ryan Drebber, actually?
Yeah. So like, that would have been through Ryan, because he was doing the booking for 432 at the time.
Yeah.
Or still is.
Yeah, he's still working with them. I Cloud Nothings are interesting. I like some of their stuff. I'm not into everything they do, but they've got some pretty good stuff. Like, you know, I think there's one of their albums I heard, I can't remember which one it was, that I thought was pretty good, but there's some of their earlier stuff that I thought, this is all right. But yeah, I think it depends on the stuff. I don't know how big into them you guys are or anything, but
yeah, this was massive.
Because they're a big sort of deal in the indie scene. So
yeah, man. I mean, it would be amiss to say that like when I was really young, well, I'd say really young, like when I was like 16, 17, Cloud Nothings like huge for me. So like getting told that we were getting support then was like sort of a teenage dream come true.
Yeah, so yes, further on from that reminds me of, speaking of Ryan and stuff, like the first time I saw you guys where I was like proper like, oh, this is cool, like, you know, I'm well into this, these guys are ace, would have been, you guys put a gig at the Depot with Braticus and Youth Avoiders that Ryan had organised as well. I remember that one being funny because he'd stopped doing Accidental Gold stuff because he put us on once before, he'd stopped doing that, and then he'd forgotten that he'd like booked this gig until near the time and was like, ah shit, I have to do this gig. I remember, and it was like a matinee show, and I remember going along to it. Like, that was a really good gig. Like, you guys were ace. Braticus were on like fucking fire. I think that might be one of my favorite.
Yeah, it was really good.
They just were amazing. Like, you know, like they had so much energy. Like, I never heard them before. And I was like, this band are really cool. It's really old sort of hardcore kind of style, like old school kind of punk sort of stuff. And they were just amazing. So
Pro Skater vibes. I loved it.
Yeah, that was a good one. I remember that because it was, as you say, it was a matinee show, and it was like midsummer. It was roasting.
No, it wasn't midsummer. It was 420. I remember that.
Oh, was it?
No, but you're right when you were saying like it was absolutely sweltering. Like, it was one of the hottest shows I've ever played in my life.
But I think that just made it even better, especially Youth Avoiders, because they were class.
They were so fun. And then they went to play in
Glasgow. Oh, yeah, that whole day was so fun because I think we played with them in the daytime in Edinburgh, and then my girlfriend was putting on a show in Glasgow at the old Hairdressers with a bunch of bands, and that was one of those gigs where they put out the poster which had 4 bands, but they had like lots of touring acts that like ended up just jumping on the bill at the last moment, and Youth Avoiders were one of those bands, and so it ended up being like a sort of 7-band bill. One of the first hottest days of the year, and I just remember being kind of like half cut in the middle of the day, getting on a mega bus back to Glasgow, walking through the town with all our gear, and then going to this old Hairdresser show, which was like absolutely packed to the rafters. And like, that was just like one of the craziest, sweatiest, hottest days of music of my life. It was so good. It was such a joyous day. Such a joyous day.
So did you guys play the old Hairdresser show as well, or did you just go watch? I wasn't sure if you were on the bill for that one or not.
Thank God we just watched.
It would have been fucking difficult to play. I don't know how the Youth Avoiders did it, man. Like,
yeah, at that point, because I think I was kind of like, because the 3 of us were there and we all had our equipment, I was sort of like trying to like nudge my girlfriend into saying like, oh, you guys should just play as well. But by that point, I think there were like, as I say, like 6 or 7 bands like trying to play this like evening slot, which started at like 7:30, and like everyone needed to be out by 11. So already it was like everyone was stressed out their nut trying to like accommodate everyone that was already playing.
Fair. That sounds like a lot of fun, though. I think as well for that gig as well, it's important to like, we were talking about it briefly earlier. Basically, it's important to give a shout out to Ryan Draver. I think, because as you were saying, like off mic in this, it's like he does have like an insane like, childlike, I guess. Did you know? Was it childlike enthusiasm you said he had? Like, well, I would just say he's just really enthusiastic and just like really like, like, I guess, go ahead and stuff, and just like he has so much energy, and he put on loads of cool shows and stuff, and he's a very lovely guy. So it's important to give him like, I think a lot of, I think, love and respect. He deserves our our attention, I think, because he's great.
Yeah, it's like, it's not even childlike. It's just like this 100% like enthusiasm for like whatever someone is doing. He's just like backs it fully if he's into it. And he was just always, because I lived in Edinburgh shortly before moving to Glasgow, and like he was just a kind of constant with there all the time, just like constantly backing everything that everyone was doing, and especially with the whole like Leith Depot stuff, like Save Leith Walk and all that sort of stuff. He was really that, and so huge shout out to that guy. Very positive individual, positive influence.
I remember the one time he put my band Moist on. It was basically, I remember he had like a gig booked, and it was Bilge Pump were playing. I don't know if you guys know them, but they're amazing. And he had them booked, and then I think it was what was it? It was the band pulled out. Bridal Shower pulled out, and he needed a band for the gig. And he was like to me, "Oh, do you know any like noisy weirdos who could play this gig?" And I'm like, "Ryan, I'm playing a band of noisy weirdos. Can we play?" Because he'd seen us, like, because that night he was working on the bar that night. We had like our tape launch that night, so basically we were playing anyway. Like early in that week, so we were playing on a Monday night at the Depot, and it was really the Depot just gets really sweaty in general, and I remember that being quite a fun one. And I remember we were playing, and he just like needed a band for like a matinee show that Sunday or something, and then we were like. And I was just like, well, we could do it. And then he's seen us, and he was like, oh, that's, because he just seen us, and he was like, oh yeah, that was really cool. Let's do that kind of thing. And it's just funny that he asked me if I knew any noisy weirdos, and I'm like, you've just seen me do the noisy weirdo thing. Like, give us the gig. So
but I think that's like what worked so much in favor of Ryan as a person. I think he's one of these guys that always just ends up. It's like what Nardwar said. Nardwar, the guy that the sort of music journalist interviewer guy. He was always saying like, if you don't ask, you never get, kind of thing. And Ryan's just always one of those guys that I think, because he was always asking, he was always sort of, as I say, like enthusiastic about stuff. Things just sort of ended up falling into his lap, and I think he always had this sort of like inferiority complex of like, why are all these, like convenient, great things happening to me? And it's because he's just like got that. If you don't ask, you never get kind of attitude. And I think like I always really respected that about him, definitely.
Yeah, it's funny as well, because the first time I saw you guys would like, the previous incarnation with Duds, me and Kieran from Moist, like we only got into that we got into that. We only got let in because it was sold out. There were nowhere basically it was sold out. We only got in because the gig we played with him, he only gave us beers because because there wasn't that amazing turnout. He wanted to make sure Bilge Pump got most of the money, which is fair dues. We were a last minute addition, but because he's a lovely guy, he felt bad about it, and then like kept trying to like let us into gigs for free and all this. I was just like, Ryan, take my money, please. Like, I still do it, but it was just funny when he was just like, if they try to make it up to us, and you're just like, you don't need to make it up to us, man. Like, but I love that about him. You're just like, dude, like, it's cool. Like, like you did us a favor giving us that slot, so like, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just certified legend.
For sure. Back to that gig I was talking about that he put you guys on at. It's funny because I remember that gig. Like I remember after you guys played, I was like, I want to go tell the Depot guys that I really enjoyed that. I remember going up to yourself in this. And I remember we were speaking, and I think you and Nora had spoken briefly. I think then you were saying something nice to her about the sound or something. And I remember kind of just like talking to you guys how much I like really liked the set, and then it led into some conversation where we both started almost effectively fanboying each other's bands, because you were like, oh yeah, I'd heard your band before as well, I didn't realize that you were in that. And we just like like later on I spoke to her about that, and she was like, yeah, the two of you were just like totally fanboying each other. It was quite cute or something. I was like,
Oh man, like I love it when that happens. That happens more times than you think when you sort of start talking to someone, especially at gigs where you start talking to someone about like one thing, and that just sort of inevitably leads to like loads of links being established, and especially like when that happens, when you sort of find out that someone's behind like something you genuinely really like, and you're just like, oh my god, man, I love your stuff.
Making it all American there.
That's the fanboy accent. I love it, man.
That's how Ennis actually speaks, you know.
The Scottish accent's all a facade. He actually sounds
It's
like
a publicity front. He just thinks it'll suit Deathbed better, but he speaks to us like that. Yeah.
That's from
We've just learned to deal with
it. That sounds annoying. I don't know if I could deal with somebody who spoke like that all the time.
really fucking annoying. You really don't like it.
Yeah, you're right, man. It is annoying.
But yeah, while we're here, I want as well, like I want to give a big shout out and love to, like, Caesar just mentioned them a couple of times. I want to give a big shout out to my guys who I play in Moist with, just while we're talking about like the links with those bands briefly as well. So I want to give special, so lots of love and everything to them, amazing people. But yeah, so moving on from that gig, so yes, I remember that. So you guys played then, and then that made, and then I remember the first time I put you guys on would have been a couple months after that, because I remember after that we were talking and we were like, oh, let's do a show together. So we played together. It was another warm, sweaty day actually, and another matinee show. So it seems to be a theme here. Also at the depot, and I remember putting you guys on then, and that was a load of fun as well, because like I remember Moist played, you guys played, Clacker played, and I had Mind Moth on as well, and I remember that being a really great show. And I remember you guys played like a really short set there. You only played like, I think it was only 20. I think it was only 20 minutes you guys played for or something. But it was just like a really short, intense set. So I guess maybe you were sort of gearing up to the really heavy stuff at that point, because the heavier noise at that point, because you were just like, right, we're going to like effectively all frills, like assault on the senses there. So
I think that was the first gig that we kind of decided to just cut the older stuff and just play heavy stuff. Kind of just focus on that.
Because
Alex song and stuff for that one. We just played the newer stuff.
Yeah, we were trying to sort of beef up the set for a while, like sort of add stuff in, because we did think it was long enough. And I remember it was around about that time that we just kind of decided if it's short, it's short. Like energy and actually putting on a good show is more important than putting on a long show.
I think, like Grant said, we had like a kind of bunch of songs that we were maybe not so enthusiastic about playing at that time, but we just included them anyway because we were like, that'll at least take us up to like 25 minutes or whatever. But yeah, as Grant said, just like sort of like dropping that from the set, just sort of like gave up that facade and just like, oh fuck it, like let's just absolutely bomb through it, which is fun because like you end up kind of making an impression. But like I would definitely say it's like our favorite part about being a band is playing live. So it's like when you start playing the last note of your last song, you're like, oh fuck, I wish we'd like written more songs.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like a lot of our songs, or the more recent songs we did, have a lot of parts. So I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when we play it, it never feels like a short set because
there's a lot. It goes a lot of places.
Yeah, each 2-minute song has like 8 or 9 sections.
What about you guys? I'm exhausted at the end of 20 minutes, so I'm happy that it's short. So exhausted.
It sounds intense stuff to play for that one, the time and stuff, for sure. So I guess that ties a nice section of what I wanted to ask as well. So how do songs sort of come together for yourselves? Do you just like can they come from all sorts of places? Can some come from jams, or do either of these, do some of these bring stuff in sometimes and you guys work on it from there? Like how do songs kind of develop from yourselves?
A lot of times they come from like ideas of things that we would like to be able to play. So for me on the drums, it was like I wanted to know how to play blast beats, and so we like wrote songs with blast beats in them that I couldn't play. And we just practice it until we could play it. And so we kind of like write songs that really challenged us, like on our instruments.
I think I would always maybe have some sort of blueprint of something, like a couple of riffs that I thought would sound cool. or like a fully fledged song idea, but it would never. I don't think it's ever been that one of us has ever gone in with saying like, oh, this is like a song that I've written or anything like that.
No.
A
lot of. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to pretty much back up with what Iain was saying, was that it would always come from like a funny theme that always developed whenever we were practicing. Is we would always start with like ideas or whatever riffs, and then I think we would get so bogged down in like trying to make something that we would start getting quite frustrated and annoyed, and like there would be like this really sort of kind of oppressive atmosphere in the room where like none of us are like enjoying what we're doing.
Yeah, this is failed. It would quit right now. Yeah,
it would always get to this point where we're just like so pissed off and kind of getting pissed off with each other as well, like kind of like I guess like sitting on some sort of like, oh god, we're always get like this really nasty atmosphere. And then I don't know what clicks or what changes, but like fast forward another 2 hours and we've like completed a song and we're all like going laughing and saying like, oh man, like that's the best thing we've ever written.
Yeah.
I don't know what that formula is, but that seems to have been the formula for like the past like maybe 6 or 7 songs we've written together. It's like followed that formula.
It's like we kind of recognize when it gets to that point of hitting some sort of wall and then forcing any idea, any further ideas that happen, just kind of like going full on with those ideas and maybe focusing on the less the big picture and more on just like getting the little section down, and then the song might completely morph to something else from that.
Yeah,
it's kind of like we don't really have any idea of what the finished song is going to be like. We literally write our music from like, we'll write the first 10 seconds and then we'll try and write another bit to bolt onto that, and then we'll have 20 seconds and then we'll write another bit to bolt onto that, and then maybe repeat that whole section. So then we've got like a minute, and then we might just try and write something completely different. But each time we try and write something, there's like this moment of us like really just having to like be fully confident and force any ideas that we have, even if they're really silly and stupid. They actually usually end up, or really difficult. If it's something like, that's the thing. If it's something like really difficult, that's usually a really good idea, because then we're just going to learn how to play something completely new.
Yeah, I think we're drawn to stuff that's almost impossible when you try and play it the first time. There's this sort of unspoken recognition that if it's impossible, then it must sound good when we are able to play it. So we'll just pursue that. And if it is really easy to play, well then it must be a kind of bad idea. So we'll just leave it by the wayside.
It's either a bad idea or it's like a slice of Riff City, as that guy put it in.
A slice of Riff City. But then it's good to have a slice of Riff City when you have, the difficult bread around it.
Yeah.
If we're going to really take this metaphor home.
To make a really great song sandwich. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Who said that phrase, Slice of Riff City?
It was like this guy, what's it called, like Black Glitter Promotions or something?
Try and shout that guy out, but we can't remember his name.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's Black Glitter or something like that. But it was just like one of those things we got like tagged in a post. I think it was one night when me, Iain, and our friend Lucas were hanging out, and I saw that this tag had come up, and we just like had been tagged in a podcast, and like we went through it and trying to listen out for where we were, very narcissistically, and then he like talked a bit after the song, and he just kind of like the first thing he said was like, and that was a slice of Riff fucking City.
Oh yeah, the fucking
like. It almost sounds like a sort of like, I don't know. To me, it just made me think of like those like Japanese like punk records that just had titles that kind of were just like didn't make much sense, but kind of did at the same time.
A slice of Riff City. I think I've only just noticed how ridiculous that is.
It's an amazing phrase. What are you talking about? It's amazing. I'm totally going to start using that to describe you guys from now on. Like if I ever put these on again when we get out of this mess, like that's totally what I'm just going to put. Deathbed deliver slices of Riff Cities.
You have to add
individual slices.
Yeah, it needs to be Riff fucking City. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be Riff fucking City.
When gigs could be a thing again, you could just promote yourself as what do you guys sound like? Well, we sound like like a riff, what was the phrase? Oh fuck, I've forgotten the phrase again. Slice of Riff City. You just like, yeah, we're a Slice of Riff City.
Yeah, that's our new bio for fans of Slices of Riff City.
And sunny days. Right, cool. Right. So yeah, so I guess like another thing I would ask as well. So you guys got that. So you had your album. Was that April of this year that was released? April 2020 or May? No, it was May, wasn't it? May 2020.
Yeah.
So that came out and that was on. So yeah, that was actually recorded. So that was recorded in like a studio. It said on Bandcamp that was in where did it say? Chime Studios or something? Chime Studios.
Yeah.
So so I'm assuming that's in Glasgow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like near. It's like sort of north next to the motorway. It's like near Civic House, if you know where that is. It's like just off Maryhill Road, basically.
Sort of know where you are. My geography of Glasgow's not the most amazing, but
the motorway that like
sort of try to get the good. Is that in like the east,
west,
the north, like the
motorway?
What's the
north of the centre?
Yeah, just north of the Cowcaddens subway station, basically.
Ah, right, yeah, right. I kind of sort of got an idea where you are now. So I see there was a Billy Gawkin and that recorded that, and a guy called Ross McGowan who mastered that. I think the pair of them did it well. However they did it, they did a great job because like it sounds really good. Like I mean, it's well recorded. Like I mean, from seeing you guys live a few times like that. Yeah, I'd say like, it definitely captures you guys really well, and everything sounds clear, but suitably kind of like I guess like noisy and rough as well, but while also having that sort of the right level of polish for the sort of stuff you guys do, I would say as well. So what was recording that like? Like why did you go there, and what was the experience like going in there, and I guess recording in a proper place rather than just demoing in?
Yeah, it was fun. So fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've known so Billy, who recorded it, he's in loads and loads of, is and has been in loads of really good Glasgow bands, like Rapid Tan, Herbert Powell, like sick of talk and stuff like that.
Jobby.
So he's and like he does all sorts of mad. He's DJ Robert Douglas as well. So he's just like, and he did the engineering at 13th Note a lot. So he's just a man about tune.
Engineer Hug, and that's how he knew Ross, who was also an engineer at the Hug and Pine.
Yeah, and Ross is like, Ross has been recording and playing in bands like in Glasgow, like even when we were like way before we even moved there or anything like that. I think he's had Chime Studio for a really, really long time. But we had like these connections to both Ross and Billy, where I think they liked what we did. We always played gigs with them. We were always chatting after like playing gigs and stuff like that. And I think there was just like obviously a mutual thing of like, oh, we're looking to record. Oh, I can record, and it was always like sort of a loose arrangement until finally one day just kind of honing in on it and being like, oh, like, let's take a couple of days off in November and like actually do this.
Remember, we'd actually already recorded the album. In our space.
So we'd recorded the album already, and unfortunately, it was like the kind of classic album tragedy of like everything just getting lost. The whole thing just sort of disappeared. So we were kind of needing to re-record it anyway, and I think that's kind of the same time when we were playing a lot of shows at the 13th Note, and we were just talking to Bill. That ended up just being almost, I guess like that's the sort of silver lining of losing the record, was that we were like, Billy was like, oh, I can like, Ross is up for us using Chime to record and blah blah blah, because Chime Studio is like fucking nice, man, so nice. Like Ross has built that place up for like a long time, and it's loads of great gear that you can have lots of fun with. Ross is just like such a nice guy that, and open, and just kind of would allow us to kind of, within reason, sort of experiment with stuff as much as we wanted, really. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun going in there and being able to actually be in a studio setting with someone that knew what to do as well. I think that was the other thing, is like Billy's like a really good engineer. He's got like a lot of like experience on his back, so he was a great help in kind of directing us towards certain sounds or ideas. And he would bring in a bunch of like daft pedals that we would run stuff through. He brought his tape machine in and all that sort of stuff. So
I think that was Billy's first. That he's got so much experience as like recording like in bedrooms and stuff. I think that was also like a real creative, like fun time for Billy, because he'd never really recorded in the studio like that before. So he was wanting that. He was just playing around with that too. So like it was just kind of experimental and fun for all of us, including Bill. And like that just shows like how much of a great engineer he was, because he was just like figuring out how to use that studio like while we were recording.
I think the beauty of it was that he'd done our sound so much at the note as well that he knew. He kind of knew how to he knew what we were looking for, and he also knew how we sounded best.
Yeah, he knew.
So there wasn't really much explaining having to be done. It was just kind of like, right, if you guys use this, this, and this, you'll get this. And we were like, sweet.
Yeah, he knew what we sounded like live and how to make it sound like.
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted the album to be, was like a representation of our lives.
The only difference between that and the live sound is that we don't have 8 guitarists.
No.
We will do the next gig though. They'll all be like behind the amp, sort of. Like 3-piece, but the whole 8-piece.
You're not going to hire tour musicians, are you now, guys? Come on.
No, we're just going to get one of those guitars for Innes that has 8 necks on it. It's like one of the ones that goes round in a big circle.
I'll just be windmilling the whole time.
It sounds like this is a theme for Deathbed. Innes gets spinned around in circles at some point.
Yeah.
That's a secret Deathbed ritual to create music, is spinning him in circles by the sounds of it.
Maybe something we've not quite tapped into, actually. That's a good point, man. We'll need to explore that.
Yeah, it's definitely something to brainstorm.
But no, like you're recording though, it's good that you were in obviously with someone who obviously had done your sound before, and it sounds like as well he was a big fan if he was like wanting to go the extra mile to get like the studio and stuff for you guys and to record and stuff. So it sounds like it was the right choice for you to go in with him, because when you listen to it, it definitely does sound like someone who definitely does get what you guys are about here, and there's not a moment where you're like, oh man, that should have been recorded like another way. I think just as a fan listening to it, I think like it. Yeah, it very much sounds like what you guys should sort of sound like and stuff, and it's cool that it sounds good as well, because there's all this sort of, I guess, aggressive heaviness sort of aspect of it, but then there are moments like in the song like Ice Cream, for instance, where there's like sort of, it comes down kind of to like a more, I guess, mid-paced kind of moment and stuff, and he captures those changes like really well, I'd say. Like Ice Cream's one of my favorite songs that you guys do, actually. I really like that one, but I think the dynamic change in there is really cool, but it's not really the easiest to really get right if you're recording that, because it is quite intense, and then it gets quite more mid-paced, and he did a good job of capturing that, basically, is what I want to say there.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
But yeah, right, I'm trying to think of where to go next. Sorry, what was that, Ian?
Nothing.
Sorry, it came up on the screen that you were going to say something, and I was like, "Oh shit, what's he going to say?" Maybe he's got something. Maybe he's got some interesting way of leading this chat forward, but it sounds like you don't. So. No. Well, yeah, I guess we'll discuss the album and stuff. So I guess we can kind of probably break for the second set of songs and stuff here. anyone who's listening to this there will have heard Doom Wound by Deathbed, Orange Julius by Cherubs, Captain by Idlewild, Har by Ultra Demon, and Repent by Deathbed. So first off, I guess thing to talk about here would be sort of songs you can play on this. You picked quite a fair range. So basically your tastes are quite varied by sort of sounds of it stuff. So stuff you listen to that's not the sort of heavier, noisier stuff. Do you feel that comes into like the way you guys approach anything, or do you feel like it's more when you're writing you kind of think more of the heavier stuff that you listen to?
Yeah, I think the Deathbed is like came about as us as a band that like we wanted to play heavier stuff because of we all listen to like really varied music. So like I think we felt like we wanted a band that would cater to the heavier stuff that we listen to. For me anyway, like the influences for Deathbed all come from like the heavier stuff we listen to. I mean, Cherubs there was a direct like this is what we want to sound like when we found that song. Like that song was just like holy shit, it's just like full on. But also
because we used to cover that song quite a lot.
Yeah, it used to be in our set. Yeah,
right at the start.
Yeah, that was definitely like the catalyst. That was a very, very important catalyst, was hearing Orange Julius, and just being like, fuck, that is exactly the sort of shit I want to be doing.
The energy there is perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I don't just think about the sort of heavier stuff when we're writing. I mean, I think that's comes a lot down to my personal taste when playing the bass, more specifically, rather than the songwriting. But I wouldn't say it's anything in particular, but I just kind of try and emulate various sort of sounds that don't necessarily come from the heavier side, just because I think that makes it more interesting for me. I do like personally, I do like bass lines that kind of run parallel to the guitar part. So I personally, when I'm writing, I try to not copy Innes too much. I think especially when we're a three-piece, it sounds good to have two different ideas going at the same time, one with a guitar and one with a bass, rather than me just sort of following the root notes or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's something that I personally try and do a lot, because I find it more interesting for myself, and because I think it makes the song more interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's because when we were trying to pick the tracks to like give to you earlier for the podcast, like another band that came up quite often was Unwound, and like that's like a good example of one of these bands that they're a three-piece as well, but just the like how expansive their sound is
absolutely
astonishing. And like what Grant was saying about running things parallel is like in Unwound songs you never hear the bass kind of just plodding along to whatever the root notes are. There's always some kind of mad rhythm, or maybe, you know, a lot of the time with Unwound as well, is like their songs are built around a bass riff, which I think is kind of cool. But I think like what Iain was also touching on this earlier was that there's always ideas that one of us will have, and then you'll write a 10-second block around that, and then it will just I do this. I talk to the guys quite a lot about this, but often when I'm not actually physically playing music, I'll be walking to work or something, I'll be like playing through a song in my head, and through that I think a lot of our ideas come from just kind of what you would in a split instant think would come after. So like you've got one section that's kind of da 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 da, and then your head just automatically comes up with the next bit, just purely on a whim. Like, oh, that it would sound cool if after that we did X. And I think that's how a lot of our songs like build up, is that we just have these ideas, and then we sort of then have to like teach ourselves what we've already composed in our heads, kind of thing.
A lot of songs do start from like Innes will have a riff that he'll bring in, not like a fully fledged song or anything, but just a specific riff. And that I like writing like that, because I don't know if it's just me, the way I play bass or whatever, but I enjoy following, whether it's a groove or whether it's a rhythm or someone, or following the guitar. I don't usually come in with an idea, because I don't know, I like slotting in and sort of gauging what the others are doing, gauging how Ian's playing, gauging how Innes is playing, and then sort of thinking, well, how does the bass fit in with this?
How can you
which is just, I think that's the way I enjoy playing bass. Actually, I enjoy just like sitting listening to albums and like making up little bass lines that fit in with the songs I'm hearing, rather than writing something myself from a bass line.
Trying to fit into that pocket, basically. 'Cause that's one way you can approach bass playing.
I think that's why I enjoy playing bass. I grew up playing guitar, and I sort of switched to bass a few years ago, and that's why I enjoy it so much more. Is it's a kind of like, I think of it as a sort of intermediary between the two. So Innes is playing this, Iain's got this, and I try and think how I can fit in and sort of slot between them and work off what of their ideas more.
It depends on what you feel your role and stuff, because sometimes songs that make sense to you, you've got to kind of fill this pocket kind of there and stuff as a bass player and stuff sometimes, and everything kind of make it kind of sound quite full and quite thick and stuff, but equally not tried on other things too much. But it depends, because sometimes, like, you know, like you're saying, with Unwind, sometimes the bass can, you know, songs can be based around like a bass, like a truck, and kind of do weird noisy things off it. So it's quite a varied and quite exciting instrument, I think. Like, you know, like I love playing bass, like, you know, and you can kind of play off like different roles and stuff. And you're right, it could be really easy to kind of just go into a role where you kind of just, you basically ape the guitar riffs and stuff. And sometimes that does make sense, whereas other times it's like, no, you should be playing something kind of that's a different part in parallel. Particularly when you have like a free piece, so if it's only one bass and one guitar, you've got all this space to go and do different things. And sometimes it can be easy to know what to do, other times it's quite hard. So it's good that you kind of think like that, because you see some noisier bands and they do just, that's what the bass does, and you're kind of like, well, that's not as exciting as what you're saying, doing parallel things to it. So
yeah, definitely. And I just through I don't know, just personally, I always I'm slightly less interested in bands when they're like that. I do like it when every instrument is kind of has its own little thing that works in tandem with everything else, rather than just like, as you say, aping the guitarist or sort of.
I agree completely. Yeah, it's more fun. It's more fun to listen to music where there's like, you could listen to the drums and then like you could only listen to the drums for the whole song and it'll be fun, or only listen
exactly.
And then like you could surprise and just listen to the bass and like, and then anything else that's going on, like backing singer is like ooh la la la. Ooh, la.
It sounds like you guys had a very similar ethos to kind of how me and Kieran and Jordan do stuff in Moist, because we're with that as well. Like, you know, like you've seen us like live the one time and stuff, but basically, I don't know if you noticed when you were seeing us then, but like basically, yeah, we don't play the same thing. You know, like it's all the guitar and the bass play completely different parts. There's never a point in that band where, you know, me or Kieran are playing like the same thing at all. The bass and the guitar are always doing completely different parts altogether, and sometimes even the drums. Sometimes the drums are like the lead instrument in points and stuff as well. And like, you know, that to me is quite an exciting way to do things and everything. So. Like so it's cool to kind of hear like you guys say that, because like sometimes bands kind of like don't. A lot of bands do think that way, but sometimes there's bands that don't think that way, and it's quite nice when you hear about bands kind of thinking, oh, how can we make the part almost it's an interesting on its own without the other bits there, and then it all kind of comes together and fits like a sort of almost like a big happy family and stuff. It seems like you guys are very wired that way, and that's really cool. Basically, that's what I'm getting at.
Definitely, I think as you put it quite succinctly there, it's about how can each instrument do something that on its own would be interesting, that doesn't need the other instrument and like other instruments to just kind of justify it being there.
Cool, right? So, and the next thing I wanted to say as well. So we're talking about like other bands that you guys have picked and stuff there. So on all these podcasts, I do a thing where basically I get the band to interview, yourselves in this case, to talk about like a fellow DIY act that they really like, and Innes told me the choice for yourselves for that was a band called Cartilage, based in Glasgow. So basically, just can you give a brief overview of who are Cartilage and what they're about, and why you guys have picked them effectively? So
who wants to take that one?
I'll say that was another band that we kind of played with and was quite formative in the way that. Well, for me personally, it was like, wow, there's only 2 people on stage right now, but like the whole room is filled with like so much noise.
Yeah. And
that was really quite inspiring to just like, it's just riffs. Like it's just really lovely riffs. Like that's a real slice of riff fucking city right there.
Yeah.
It's just like the power of like writing a good riff with like solid drums behind it and like really great like simple vocals. Like it's I think their kind of formula is so simple and works so well, and they're consistent every single time we see them. They're so good, so fun, and also lovely people. So we like that. That's why we chose it for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like somewhere, I mean, there was so many bands I think we could have chosen, because we were always playing with people that I would say we consider like, you know, like when you're playing all together, when you're in kind of a small place like Glasgow, you're sort of playing with the same people quite frequently, and you're always going to each other's shows. And you know, we'd be amiss to say if like there weren't like so many bands we could have chosen to like say, oh, these guys. But I think Cartilage was definitely that. There was just a sort of, I think, I don't know how to put it. There was just like a definitely like a similar sort of energy there. In amongst like hardcore bands or like grindcore bands or anything like that. Cartilage were just like what Iain said. Cartilage was this band that were just playing fucking rock and roll riffs and just like hammering it home, and like you just can't go to a Cartilage show and like not just be sort of like nodding your head back and forth, you know. And I think because we were always talking after shows with them and saying like it would be so fun to like do a tour together and stuff like that. There was definitely like a sort of like-mindedness. That's the word I was looking for. Just like a certain like-mindedness there. We just like what the two bands were sort of doing. So like also to answer your question, Cartilage are Dean and Vicky. It's just the two of them. Vicky plays bass and Dean plays the drums. And like I'm not too sure about like the bands that Dean's been in, but Vicky used to be in this band called Divorced, who were like, or was it Divorce? I can't remember. And they're
Gene Divorce.
Yeah.
So I've heard of them but never seen them or something. So yeah, that was carry on.
As far as I'm aware, they were, but certainly like with like that scene that was about at the time, they were definitely involved in that sort of kind of industrial meets punk meets hardcore kind of thing that was going on.
Some of their stuff had like a bit of a doomy kind of vibe in places to me when I listened to the two EPs that they had. They were fast, but there was some almost doom elements kind of in their sound, I thought.
Well, I mean, yeah, just from like chats and stuff, the two of them are like really up to scratch and like know all about their sort of heavier stuff for sure. I mean, Vicky also has a sort of industrial kind of D&B techno act called Cleft, which is really, really cool as well.
Yeah, so good.
So I think both of them are just like extreme music. They're both kind of very knowledgeable and sort of quite insightful. Well, at least from my point of view, because I'm not exactly like extreme music's not kind of my forte. So like talking to them was always really eye-opening because they would always like talk about really cool bands to listen to, and they would always be wearing T-shirts, and I'd be like, "Who are they?" You know, that's it. So, but again, like the two of them are just like really kind and cool people, and just a lot of like fun to hang out with, and really like-minded. And as Iain said, when we went to their gigs, we were always just kind of going, "Fuck, this is like really fucking good stuff."
Yeah, definitely. I think the slower pace always kind of appealed to me.
Oh yeah, the breakdowns.
Well, I mean, just their whole sound, like, just they would just kind of, I don't know. It would often be like revolving around a few ideas, but just like done so well. So is that, like, as you were saying, when you see them, it's just like, me anyway, I was always just like, would get so into it.
Yeah. If you're talking about Pocket, man, like they've got fucking Pocket. Always like such a groove to like the way they play. And
yeah, groove I think is the word, because it's the sort of thing where you could have a riff and you would be quite happy to listen to it go on for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's like that sort of Brain Bombs type thing. Like they could just play for like forever and you would just still be like nodding your head because they're so infectious. And like there was this one song that they've got in particular, I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is, but it's on that tape that Grant, I wasn't at this gig, but I know that Grant and Iain both were, where they saw them, and they've just got this one song that it like slows down like maybe like 4 or 5 times, and just when you think it's kind of, you know, they're breaking it down and it's nice and slow, it just gets slower and slower and slower. It's like every time you're just like, yes. Each breakdown is more satisfying than the last.
It sounds like they'd be a really cool band to see, and I'd really like to see yourselves and them together. I think that'd be a really cool gig to see at some point. but who knows when that'll be happening again. But yeah, well, I guess it ties in nicely to what I was going to say is how is sort of, obviously we're in still unbelievably, it's kind of like a year really since this all kind of like, since we kind of got put into it, but we've been in corona situation for like a long time now, and it's means there's not been live gigs in a while. In fact, tomorrow it'll be a year since the last gig I went to or put on, like apart from like the one outdoor gig I did like in September time. In terms of like a gig in like an indoor venue and stuff, it'll be coming out a year tomorrow since the last one. That was when I put Bong on. That's just nuts to think about that's happening. So we touched on this briefly off mic earlier about Grant, you were saying you'd move back to Dunblane and stuff, but other than obviously apart from being in different cities now and stuff, how else do you feel like the whole situation's like impacted you guys as like a band, or also as like people who like to go to gigs and stuff? Like how do you feel about the whole thing and everything, apart from obviously it's a bit difficult?
Devastating.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think anyone feels great about it.
Yeah, I miss going to gigs so much. I worked in the Hug and Pint in Great Western Road. Like that's a venue. I was constantly surrounded by like gigs and music and kind of creative musical folk, and I'm not anymore. I've changed work to something that I also really love, but I missed that part of my life so much, and I really can't wait to get back to it.
I think this is something we've kind of talked about ourselves. The sad thing is that it will be the smaller, sort of basement venues, the sweatiest venues, the best ones basically, that will be the toughest to get back to normal. Your big venues that have touring bands or whatever are probably going to be able to deal with the residue of this a lot better than the small cramped places. And that I think's the saddest part really is wondering when you'll be able to just sort of crowd into this tiny place with an obscene amount of other people and just go mental again.
Yeah, they're always like the funnest ones, and I think especially for like extreme music, whether that's punk or metal or grindcore, whatever, that's such like a central tenet of those bands are all about, is the sort of letting loose and sort of the energy that accompanies. Just like make absolutely zero sense to have socially distanced gigs or minimum capacity gig. It kind of doesn't fall in favor of those genres, which are typically, as Grant said, they're typically catered to by much smaller venues, or even like venues that aren't small businesses, venues that are like DIY venues or whatever. They sort of rely on that. So I don't know if like maybe we'll see some sort of resurgence in like house shows or something like that. I don't know if that's something that's maybe long gone, or especially within Glasgow and stuff, you don't see that so much these days. But I don't know if maybe as a reaction to smaller gigs not being able to happen legally, that might be some sort of reaction. But
that would be so great if like there was a resurgence in flat gigs, because they're so fun.
Yeah. I mean, we just sort of have to wait and see, because I mean, I think the three of us, and me and you, Stuart, we were talking about this like over chat the other day, just saying like I'm quite cynical about how things are going to go in terms of quote unquote getting back to normal. I think it's going to be a really long and arduous process, and I think it's really difficult to foresee any sort of gigs like this or gigs like that going ahead without massive sort of kind of hurdles or hoops to jump through, if you know what I mean. And in that respect, like I would say, like to kind of relate the question back to what you're asking about us as a band, is like that's probably the hardest part, is that is the best part about being in a band or being in this band, is like the three of us just simply love playing live. It's like the best part. And so not having that is, well, to put it succinctly, is a shit. And so
yeah, basically, the summary of everything you've all said is, basically it's a shit situation, basically.
We had plans to, like, loose plans to maybe, like, use the time in lockdown to record another sort of EP. And for me personally, like, not having shows meant that we couldn't, like, there was no sort of like testing ground for songs. That like that's the reason we recorded the first album was like because we played so many shows with this one set that we wanted to kind of like set that in stone, like have that album recorded as a copy of our live show and then move on to other stuff. It kind of just ended up not making sense to kind of record something without the live show being there. It, like obviously as an idea it made sense, but like the energy for us all to kind of get behind recording something without playing live shows just wasn't there.
When we were getting that sort of slight optimistic things loosening up sort of around summer and that, and even into the autumn and winter of last year, we did meet up like a bunch of times. We have written like a bunch of stuff.
There's a couple, yeah.
But like when all that stuff starts to shut down again, it's sort of just, you can't really justify going into a small dingy practice space with 3 guys and practicing together when all this shit's going on. So there's definitely like that sort of that kind of second and third lockdown just sort of threw further spanners into the works, like building up this sort of momentum once again and then it getting kind of shut down because I'm not really sure when we're going to be able to practice again and stuff like that. And I don't think any of us have really been working on anything separately either, so
it's hard to find like the motivation and stuff. And you're right, pretty much spot on what you said there. The whole basically the sort of renewing, the sort of when it relaxed a bit and you could do some stuff again. Because I was similar to you guys. Like I had a few band rehearsals when things relaxed again. I think I must have had about three or four practices when things were like okay again and stuff. And you're right, you built this momentum and you like, I started playing and then you start talking about what are you going to do next? Like, we're back, we can do some stuff. Let's get some projects on the go. And then it just happens again. Like I remember writing some new thingies and stuff, and you were having some jamming some different things, and then then the whole thing happens again. You're like, fuck, I've just built up and I've worked to get to a point, and now when you get together again, that point's going to be from square one effectively again, almost with some of that stuff. Like, and that's quite frustrating. So it's a very frustrating time for bands, and there's like pretty much a lot of what all 3 of you said there. Like there's nothing more I could really add to that. Because basically a lot of what you said there is basically all 3 of you is basically how I feel about the whole thing, and it's if I said anything, it would just be extra words that wouldn't really summarize it at all. It will still say it any better effective. But what I will say is it's interesting because I talked to you about this when we were speaking briefly the other day in this as well, was that like it's really tough for bands just now, but the whole way to adapt to things obviously as you get live stream gigs and all these other things and stuff happening, it's not easy, but if you're like a solo act, it's all easier. It's definitely easier for you to adapt to the new way of doing things than bands can. Yeah, so like if you're a solo act, like it's actually like maybe worked okay for you. Because I found my solo music is thriving at the moment. Like I've just written so much on my own, and I've been able to like adapt to play for that. And I think other solo acts I've spoken to would definitely say the same. Like even with these podcasts, what we're saying the same. Like it's a good way to keep going. They can do that, but bands, it's really difficult, like, because you're trying to be a free, even like a 2-piece band or something is really difficult, like, even just people, because you have to get in the room with people, and there's always extra precautions, always new things you have to do, and like, and you can't like, you can't just suddenly like get like a 3 guys together, split a room, and then go, right, let's do a live stream gig. It's really difficult to do that. Because I remember when we were meant to do a gig I was meant to put you guys on in April. I remember, and I was really annoyed about that because I had a really good lineup, and I was very sad that I had to cancel that. And I remember talking to Innes afterwards as well, and being like, "Oh, is there anything you guys reckon you could do for the gig? I don't know what you could do." And I remember you were just like, "That was nothing we can really do, but you can ask like Lucas, he'd be up for doing something." And then he ended up taking effectively a spot at a gig that you guys would have had, but it's weird because like Lucas sounds nothing like you guys, you know what I mean? So it's weird that like we've you have to do stuff like that. So
I genuinely I just don't think our music would work well in that kind of live. Like I think what we all enjoy playing live is not so much the music, where with a solo act the emphasis is on the music, but it's the energy of the room. It's enjoying the kind of process of playing live and getting really into it. And I just feel if we tried to get into a room and record a live stream, I think it would be the most contrived thing of us gyrating on camera while people sit at home in their like fucking pants watching us. Like it just wouldn't work. It would be weird as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, really fucking stupid, man. It was weird.
I mean, we could try it, but
We'd have to lean into the weird angle. I think it would.
Yeah, I think we'd have to sort of do it
play everything like
knowing, very self-aware that it's dumb.
Maybe playing in between like all the songs, you guys just spin in this round, and or maybe have some like wrestling skit, or have some wrestling skits or something. Like I don't know.
Maybe that's what we'd do.
I think it would be more fun to watch us all wrestle than to.
Yeah, we'll just leave the music out of it and just become deathbed pro wrestling.
Just play the album in the background while we wrestle.
Well,
an album.
I'd watch that on like live on like Twitch or something. I think Twitch would be a good platform for some dumb shit like that.
Well, we get like an instrumental version of get all the vocals pulled, get an instrumental version of the album, get that SingStar mic, and then just get Iain and Grant to beat the shit out of me on Twitch, and I'll just scream into the microphone along to the music.
That would capture like the energy, because as you're saying as well, another thing that's that we're missing about like the whole gig thing is just it's the experience of like this energy in a room with all these people like vibing off of each other and being in this one thing together. Like you can come from so many different walks of life or places, and then when you're at a gig, all that matters in that moment really is the band or the act that you're watching, and you all kind of like are on this kind of, I guess you experience it differently. Everyone experiences music differently, but you're on this very much collective wavelength almost, just experiencing it and just feeling the energy. And honestly, it's going to be such an assault on all the senses. When music comes back, it's going to be such an assault on, when live gigs come back, it's going to be such an assault on all the senses. Like I think we're all going to be delighted, but also like very overwhelmed by like the loudness and power of it, and that's kind of exciting, but also like, I want that now, damn it, Yeah,
I mean, it's weird to think that it's like a year ago that any of us were at any gigs.
Yeah, I find that hard to get my head around.
So strange.
It would be weird playing gigs as well, whether getting back on the stage and just like plugging in will feel the same, or whether there'll be this sort of like, oh, I forgot what this was like.
I think I kind of like, I've talked a lot about this with Morgan. It's just like, putting on a gig again, you're gonna have like a weird sort of sense of anticipation. There's going to be a lot more kind of, it's going to be so much more anticipation behind it, because we've been talking quite a lot about like post COVID party kind of thing. It's very wishful thinking, and it probably won't be executed in the way you would ideally want to, but at the same time it's been interesting just thinking about that sort of the sort of atmosphere that would lead up to like a big, noisy, sweaty gig like that. Everyone would be like, it's like, ooh, this is so naughty.
For sure, it's gonna be big celebrations definitely at everybody's end when things can happen again. But I don't think we'll be seeing any outdoor. I don't think we'll be seeing any indoor gigs until probably October of this year at the earliest, to be honest. And I really hope all the small venues can survive, and same with the practice space as well. I really hope it can all survive, and we can all get back to making sweaty music and watching our friends playing with our friends and stuff. I really hope that can come back and in some capacity, hopefully before the year's over. But maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe.
Indeed. Right. I think should maybe like, I'm trying to think if we should end here or we should maybe try and think of something more positive to end on. I think picturing Innes being spun around is, and then you guys doing that thing, that's quite positive to think about. But I think maybe one nice thing to maybe go for it then would be when I was talking to Innes earlier about like what songs you guys wanted to pick and stuff. You were saying you guys were having a hard time picking what ones you wanted, and I can't not mention this. And he was saying you were finding it difficult because he was saying, Grant, you were listening to Cello Drones. He was saying he was listening, Innes, you were saying you listened to 90s Jungle, and then he was saying that Iain, you were listening to like a lot of Sam Cooke and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's some range. So what I thought a nice thing to end on would maybe be, can you each maybe pick something from those three things that you've been listening to that you'd like, that you'd recommend to folk to maybe bring some joy to other people, basically. So each maybe just suggest something, but in those three things that might be quite nice that you think other folks should be here. Just something positive to end this on, so we're not all going, oh, it's all shit about gigs and everything.
Positive end notes.
Well, it's just something like, if you could all pick something from like the three things I said there, like, the 90s Jungle, Cello Jones and Sam Cooke, like maybe pick something good from all three of those that would be good for folk to hear.
The song that I was obsessed with when we got asked to pick was A Change Gonna Come by Sam Cooke, which I think is, it was written at the height of the civil rights movement, which is like way more kind of important than us being sad about not being able to play gigs, but the message is the same. Like, it's hopeful, but also really sad.
I would point to one of the songs you played, which we never really got to talk about, which is the "I Am" song, rather than the cello drones, because that would depress everyone to fuck. Like I don't know, I don't know if you should listen to that. It's class. Oliver Coates is the celloist, but check him out. But also check out "I Am," red, black, and green sofa jazz mix. Watch the video, admire the mustaches. You know, try and find some light in life, and I think that is all the light anyone needs.
Yeah, I would just to keep it apt on the jungle front. Listen to "Music Is So Special" by Brothers with Soul. That's just like a kind of standard jungle D&B track, but it's got like the title is very apt for what we're talking about.
Cool, right, amazing. So I think, so to close up, the last few songs we'll play will be The Walkaround by Deathbed, Filthy Fucking Man by Cartilage, and then Ice Cream by Deathbed. Well, thanks all three of you for doing this. It's been fun, despite the tech issues we were having at the start. I don't know, maybe that was the best bit, the tech issues and I
think the conversation about the weather was a highlight. I think your listeners don't know what they miss.
But thanks all three of you for being on this. It's been a pleasure blathering with you guys. So
thanks a lot.
Thanks, man.
Really fun. Yeah, cheers.
Right, we'll just play the last few songs and then we'll end.
Die!
Okay, so thanks to everybody who tuned into or listened to that there. That was Fuzz Bat Gigs Podcast episode number 5 with our special guests Innes, Iain and Grant of the band Deathbed. I forgot to mention earlier in the podcast that you can find Deathbed on Bandcamp, YouTube and Spotify. Deathbed's album No Bees in Hell is also out on Negative Hope Records, and Negative Hope Records are a small DIY label and musical collective based in Glasgow. They also put out music by other cool acts such as Sulka and Moonsoup. They've got a Bandcamp as well, so definitely go and check them out. All the other acts that I played during this episode, you can find them on Bandcamp, YouTube and Spotify as well, so definitely go check out all that stuff there. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing the Ace Pal. I'm very much looking forward to what I'm sure will be a lovely chat with them. So cheers for now then, folks. Please stay safe, please look after yourselves and wash your hands, and enjoy the rest of your evening, or if you're listening to this at a different time of the day, enjoy the rest of your day. So cheers for now then. Bye-bye.